Let me tell you something powerful about the way life shifts when you learn to set clear boundaries without apology. Boundaries are not walls. They're not punishments. They're simply the lines that say, this is who I am, this is what I allow, and this is where I stop. And here's the beauty of it. When you start communicating those lines with quiet confidence, you'll notice that the people who cannot respect them will remove themselves. You won't have to chase them away. You won't have to argue. You won't even have to explain. They'll feel it and they'll go. The truth is, toxic people thrive in blurred spaces. They live off of your hesitation, your guilt, your fear of saying no. The second you stop handing them that confusion, the second you stop leaving the door cracked open for manipulation, they lose their hold. Think about it. How many times have you said yes when every fiber of your being was screaming no? How many times have you softened your "I can't" with a nervous laugh just to keep the peace? That's exactly where toxic behavior digs in. It feeds on your willingness to bend. But once you stand straight, once you look them in the eye and calmly say, no, that doesn't work for me, they don't know what to do with that. They'll test it at first, of course. They'll push, they'll pout, they'll throw the same tricks your way. But when they see you don't flinch, when they realize you mean it, they'll start to retreat. Now here's what makes this really work. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't owe anyone a dissertation on why your boundary exists. No is complete. I'm not available is enough. Toxic people are masters at sniffing out your justifications because every explanation is an opening. The more you talk, the more material they have to twist, the more ways they can guilt you or turn your words against you. But when you keep it simple, calm, and firm, there's nothing for them to grab onto. You've closed the door. And don't think for a second that setting boundaries makes you mean. It makes you healthy. It makes you whole. The people who truly care for you, the ones who love you with honesty, they will respect those boundaries. They'll understand that you need them to function at your best. Only the ones who were benefiting from crossing the line will complain. And that's exactly the point. Their reaction reveals their character. So what happens when you hold that line consistently? You'll start to see people filter out of your life. And that may sound harsh at first, but let me tell you, it's not loss, it's clarity. You don't want everyone to stay. Not everyone deserves access to your energy. Some people only drain, and when they leave, you get to reclaim that energy for yourself, for the people who uplift you, for the goals that move you forward. Imagine how much lighter life feels when you're no longer carrying the weight of someone else's constant disrespect. And yes, it takes practice. The first few times you enforce a boundary, you'll feel uncomfortable. You'll second guess yourself. You might even feel guilty. That's natural because you've been conditioned to put other people's comfort above your own. But stay with it. That discomfort is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's proof that you're finally breaking a cycle, and every time you hold the line, it gets easier. You'll notice your voice getting steadier, your heart racing less, your conviction becoming stronger. Here's what's really happening. You're teaching people how to treat you. Every interaction is either reinforcing respect or inviting disrespect. When you let something slide that you know violates your values, you're silently saying, this is acceptable. But when you stand up calmly without drama and say, this doesn't work for me, you're showing the world your standard. And trust me, the world listens. Some people will rise to meet it, others won't, and they'll fade away. Either way, you win. So don't wait for the perfect time to start. Start today. Start with one simple line you've been afraid to draw. Say it once. Hold it. and watch what happens. Watch how quickly the people who cannot handle your boundaries will begin to distance themselves. They'll do the hard work for you. They'll remove themselves. That's the power of setting boundaries without apology. One of the most freeing decisions you can ever make is to stop explaining and justifying yourself. Think about how much time, how much energy you've poured into making sure people understand your choices, your reasons, your why. And yet, with certain people, no matter how much you explain, it's never enough. They twist your words. They poke holes in your reasoning. They act as if your choices require their stamp of approval before they can be valid. And that, right there, is how toxic people keep their grip on you. They thrive on your need to be understood. They feed on your constant justifications. But when you stop playing that game, when you calmly say, "This is what I've decided," and leave it at that, you cut off their fuel source. The truth is, explanations are often more about easing our guilt than convincing the other person. We want them to nod along, to say, "I get it, that makes sense." We want to smooth over the tension. But here's the problem. Someone who respects you doesn't actually need the long explanation. They trust you. They accept your no, your yes, your decision as it is. Only the ones looking for control push back. Only the ones who want to wear you down will force you into the exhausting cycle of over-explaining. And every time you hand them a justification, you're giving them material. They'll latch onto one sentence, one detail, and use it to argue, to guilt, to manipulate. If you say, "I can't come because I'm tired," suddenly they'll say, "But it's just one night, you can rest tomorrow." If you say, "I can't help because I'm busy," they'll demand to know your schedule and find the gaps. You see the trap. The more you give, the more they take. But if you simply say, "No, I can't," or "That doesn't work for me," there's nothing to dissect, nothing to debate, nothing to grab hold of. Now, does that mean you become cold, short, or rude? Absolutely not. It's about being direct with kindness. You can say no with a smile. You can say, "I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to pass," and leave it there. You can say, "That's not for me," and not fill the silence with reasons. And let me tell you, that silence feels heavy at first. You'll feel the urge to fill it, to explain yourself. But when you resist, when you let the silence sit, you'll notice something powerful. People reveal themselves and how they handle it. The healthy ones will shrug and move on. The toxic ones will squirm, push, and press. And that's when you know exactly who you're dealing with. The more you practice this, the more you'll realize how unnecessary explanations really are. You don't justify why you wear the clothes you wear. You don't explain why you like the food you like. So why explain every decision about how you spend your time, your energy, your life? You're an adult. You're allowed to choose what works for you without a panel of approval. And here's the shift that happens when you live this way. You start reclaiming your peace. No more long text messages trying to soften your no. No more rehearsing excuses in your head. No more dread when you know someone's going to question you. You stop giving them the script and they're left with silence. That silence is powerful. That silence says, "I don't need your approval to live my life." Of course, just like with boundaries, toxic people won't like it. They'll push harder at first. They'll accuse you of being selfish, cold, or distant. But those accusations are just noise. They're the sound of control slipping through their fingers. And eventually, they'll stop trying because people don't waste energy on walls that don't move. And here's the best part. You're not just protecting yourself from toxic people when you do this. You're also teaching healthy people how to interact with you. You're teaching them that your choices are your own, that you don't operate out of guilt or fear, that you are confident enough to let your no be no and your yes be yes. That builds respect. That strengthens relationships worth keeping. So stop explaining, stop justifying, start trusting yourself enough to let your decisions stand on their own. The people who belong in your life will respect that. The ones who don't will slowly fade away. That's the power of no longer needing to be understood. Toxic people thrive on one thing above everything else: your reaction. They want the spark, they want the fire. They want you to raise your voice, to argue back, to defend, to cry, to break down. Because every time you react emotionally, you hand them the power. You give them proof that they can still reach into your world and control how you feel. But here's what happens when you stay calm and refuse to engage in their drama. You take that power right back. You starve the very thing they feed on, and without it, they don't know what to do. Think about it. How many times has someone pushed your buttons just to see how far they could take it? They'll say something out of line, something sharp, something designed to sting. And the moment you snap, the moment you let your emotions spill out, they've won. Maybe they'll play the victim. See, you're always overreacting. Maybe they'll smirk because they got under your skin. Either way, you end up feeling drained, and they walk away satisfied. But when you respond with calm, when you don't take the bait, it changes the entire dynamic. Suddenly, they're the only one throwing sparks, and it gets awkward real fast when you're not fanning the flames. Now, staying calm doesn't mean you don't feel. It doesn't mean you're numb or that you're bottling everything up inside. It means you've learned to control the response. You're saying, I don't give you the right to dictate how I show up. And trust me, that quiet composure speaks louder than any argument ever could. Here's the part that takes practice: learning to sit in the tension. Toxic people know exactly how to push for a reaction, and silence makes them squirm. They'll poke harder, push more, because they're desperate for the payoff. But when you keep your cool, when you hold your ground and refuse to dance with them, the energy shifts. They start to realize that this is no longer fun for them. This is no longer a game they can win. And slowly they'll back off because you've taken away their favorite tool. Think of it like a fire. Drama is the flame, and your reaction is the oxygen. Without oxygen, fire dies out. It has no choice. That's exactly what happens when you remain calm. They'll throw their sparks, but nothing catches. You don't feed it. And before long, the flame burns itself out. This doesn't just protect your peace. It protects your relationships with the people who matter. Because the more you practice calmness with the wrong people, the easier it becomes to practice patience with the right ones. You build emotional muscle. You learn how to respond instead of react. And that discipline becomes a gift you give yourself every single day. I know what some of you are thinking, but if I don't respond, doesn't that mean they win? No, quite the opposite. Not reacting doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're in control. It means you decide when and where your energy goes. The win isn't proving them wrong. The win is not letting them drag you into a place that steals your peace. And let me be clear, you don't need to match their volume, their tone, or their chaos to make a point. Sometimes the calmest voice in the room is the one that carries the most authority. It's steady, it's grounded, it doesn't get swept away. That's the voice people remember. And that's the voice that toxic people can't handle because they can't manipulate what doesn't move. So the next time someone comes at you with drama, pause, take a breath, ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Or is this just bait? Most of the time you'll realize it's just bait. And the best move you can make is to let it pass. Not with anger, not with a lecture, just with calm, because calm is power, calm is control. Calm is what makes toxic people realize they've lost their grip on you. That's the power of refusing to give them the reaction they crave. One of the biggest shifts you can make in your life is deciding that your self-respect matters more than anyone else's approval. For a long time, many of us are conditioned to seek validation. We want people to like us, to agree with us, to tell us we're doing the right thing. And there's nothing wrong with wanting connection, nothing wrong with valuing relationships. But when you start putting approval above your own self-respect, that's when toxic people find their opening, because they know you'll bend over backward to keep their favor. They know you'll sacrifice your peace, your values, even your dignity, just to avoid their disapproval. And that's when they win. But something powerful happens when you flip that script. When you say, I would rather disappoint you than disrespect myself, you instantly change the game. You stop being controlled by guilt. You stop living on the leash of someone else's opinion. And toxic people hate that because their entire influence depends on you needing their approval. Take that away and they lose all leverage. Think about it. How many times have you said yes when you knew you should have said no simply because you didn't want someone to be upset with you? How many times have you bitten your tongue, stayed silent, or gone along with something that didn't sit right with you just to avoid rocking the boat? And what did it cost you? Maybe it cost you peace of mind. Maybe it cost you sleep. Maybe it cost you self-respect, because deep down you knew you weren't being true to yourself. That is the hidden price of chasing approval. You end up betraying yourself to keep people around who were never truly for you in the first place. But the moment you stop needing that approval, something shifts. You start carrying yourself differently. You say no without guilt. You voice your opinion without apology. You make choices that align with your values instead of someone else's expectations. And here's the key. Healthy people respect that. They might not always agree with you, but they'll admire your honesty and your strength. Toxic people, though, will get uncomfortable. They'll accuse you of changing. They'll say you've become selfish, difficult, or arrogant. But that's just noise. What they're really saying is, I can't control you anymore. And that's exactly what you want, because the people worth keeping in your life don't need to control you. They don't need you to sacrifice who you are to make them happy. They can celebrate your independence. The rest, they'll slowly fade away when they realize you're no longer bending. Now, this doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It doesn't mean you become harsh or dismissive. It means you start from a different foundation. You start with self-respect. You can still be kind, compassionate, and generous, but you're not doing it to win approval. You're doing it because it's who you are. That's the difference. When you operate from respect for yourself, your actions come from strength, not from fear. And yes, it takes courage to live this way. It's not easy to walk away from someone's good opinion. It's not easy to stand firm when someone calls you selfish for protecting your peace. But every time you choose self-respect over approval, you get stronger. You build a deeper trust in yourself. You realize that your worth isn't up for debate. It's not dependent on anyone else's validation. And it's not something you have to earn. Here's the beautiful part. Once you stop chasing approval, you start attracting people who truly value you, people who respect your boundaries, people who admire your confidence, people who aren't threatened by your independence. It's like cleaning out a closet. You make space for what actually belongs. And once you've tasted that freedom, you'll never want to go back to begging for scraps of validation. So make the choice. Let your self-respect guide you. If approval comes, fine. If it doesn't, that's fine too. Either way, you've honored yourself. And in the end, that's the only approval that really matters. That's the power of putting self-respect above the need for validation. Consistency is one of the most underrated forms of strength. We often think we need to confront toxic people, call them out, expose their behavior, or have that big dramatic conversation that finally makes them see the truth. But the reality is, confrontation isn't what pushes them out of your life. Consistency is. When you quietly, steadily live by your standards and enforce them the same way every single time, toxic people eventually realize they don't belong. You don't have to push them out. They'll remove themselves because they can't thrive in an environment where you don't budge. See, toxic people love inconsistency. They feed off it. If one day you enforce your boundary, but the next day you let it slide, they see an opening. If one moment you stand tall, but the next moment you backtrack, they know they can wear you down. They're patient. They'll wait for that one time you give in, and they'll use it as proof that your doesn't really mean no. But when you live with consistency, when your actions match your words over and over again, you take away their hope. They stop testing because there's nothing to test. And here's the thing about consistency. It doesn't need an audience. You don't need to explain it, prove it, or justify it. You just live it. You don't need to announce, I'm setting boundaries now, or I'm done tolerating this behavior. You simply stop engaging in what doesn't serve you. You stop entertaining what disrespects you. You stop rewarding behavior that drains you. That quiet consistency speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. What makes this so effective is that it shifts the focus back onto you. You're no longer trying to fix them, change them, or get them to see your side. You're simply deciding who you are and how you live, and you stick to it. And that creates a kind of stability toxic people can't stand. They don't want steady, grounded people. They want reactive, unpredictable people who can be pulled into chaos. The more consistent you become, the less space there is for them in your life. Think about it like this. Imagine someone tries to light a fire, but every time they strike the match, the flame dies instantly. Eventually, they stop wasting matches. That's what consistency does. It extinguishes the drama before it has a chance to catch. And without drama, toxic people lose interest. They crave conflict, manipulation, and control. If you're consistent, they can't get it from you, and they'll start searching for someone else who will give it to them. Now, let me be honest. Consistency takes discipline. It's easy to say, I'm done with this behavior, but when the moment comes and emotions are high, it's tempting to slip back into old patterns. Maybe you want to avoid the tension. Maybe you feel guilty. Maybe you just don't want to fight today, and that's where toxic people thrive, on those little moments of weakness. That's why practicing consistency is so important. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be steady. Each time you hold your line, even in small ways, you strengthen that muscle. Over time, it becomes second nature. And consistency isn't about being rigid or unkind. It's about clarity. It's about saying, this is who I am, and this is how I choose to live. And then backing that up with your actions. It's not about punishing people. It's about protecting your peace. And the people who are meant to stay in your life will adjust to that rhythm. They'll see your steadiness as a sign of integrity and respect it. The ones who don't, they'll drift away. The truth is, toxic people often remove themselves when life stops bending to their chaos. They'll call you boring. They'll say you've changed. They'll try to make you second. Guess yourself. But the reality is, they're uncomfortable because their old tricks don't work anymore. And the more consistent you are, the quicker they'll get the message that you're no longer available for their games. So don't waste your energy trying to expose toxic people or prove them wrong. Just live your life with consistency. Hold your standards without fanfare. Protect your peace without apology. In time, the people who can't handle that will leave on their own, and all that will remain are the relationships built on respect, not manipulation. That's the power of leading with consistency instead of confrontation. When you start focusing on growth and surrounding yourself with positive energy, you'll notice something almost magical happen. People who thrive on negativity will begin to fall away. It's not because you called them out, not because you fought them, and not because you made some big announcement about cutting them off. It's simply because they no longer fit in the environment you've created. Growth changes the atmosphere around you, and toxic people can't breathe in that air for very long. See, toxic people operate best in environments where there's constant complaining, gossip, and drama. They need circles where nothing ever changes, where everyone stays stuck, and where negativity is the default. That's their comfort zone. But when you start intentionally focusing on growth, reading, learning, building, working on yourself, choosing better conversations, protecting your peace, you make it really uncomfortable for them to stay. Because suddenly, they're the odd one out. They're the anchor while you're trying to move forward. And here's the thing, you don't even have to tell them to leave. Your energy will do the work for you. When you start showing up with joy, discipline, and vision, it becomes obvious who doesn't belong. They might roll their eyes at your goals. They might mock your positivity. They might try to pull you back into the drama. But eventually, they'll stop calling, stop showing up, stop inviting you into their negativity because you're no longer playing the part they need you to play. This is why protecting your energy is so important. Growth requires fuel, and you can't grow if you're constantly drained by negativity. Think about a plant. You can water it, give it sunlight, and it thrives. But if you pour poison in the soil, no amount of sunlight is going to save it. Your environment matters. Who you surround yourself with matters. If the voices in your circle are always tearing down, criticizing, or gossiping, that's poison in your soil. But when you start surrounding yourself with people who build you up, who challenge you in healthy ways, who celebrate your wins and encourage your growth, suddenly the soil changes and your life starts thriving. And let's be real. Choosing growth doesn't mean you walk around happy every second of the day. It doesn't mean you ignore problems or pretend everything is perfect. What it means is you refuse to stay stuck in the cycle of negativity. You choose to rise above it. You choose to look for solutions instead of excuses. You choose to build instead of tear down. That shift in mindset is what makes toxic people uncomfortable. Because if you're not feeding into their drama, they feel powerless around you. Now, some people will try to pull you back. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're not fun anymore. They'll try to guilt you into staying the same because your growth makes them face their own lack of it. But hear me, outgrowing someone is not betrayal. Outgrowing someone is part of life. Not everyone is meant to walk with you into every chapter of your story, and that's okay. The people who truly love you will grow alongside you. The ones who don't will remove themselves when they realize they can't keep you down. Here's the beautiful part. Once you start focusing on growth, you attract more of it. You find better friendships. You find mentors. You find opportunities. You start surrounding yourself with people who are also moving forward, and that momentum keeps building. And with every step forward, the space for negativity gets smaller and smaller until it has no room left in your life. So if you've been wondering how to get rid of toxic people, stop making them the focus. Make growth the focus. Pour into yourself. Protect your energy. Create an environment where negativity can't survive. Because when you do, you won't have to remove toxic people. They'll remove themselves. That's the power of choosing growth and surrounding yourself with positive energy.